All right, thank you all so much for your patience. As we have worked through some technical difficulties here with our 2020 online edition of the Charlotte Preservation Awards presented by the Charlotte Museum of History. It wouldn't be a Zoom or YouTube online event if there wasn't 20 minutes of technical difficulties at the beginning. So hopefully we have experienced all of our plan A's, B's, and C's. And thank you for your patience and for being with us tonight. My name is Adria Vogt. I'm the president and CEO for the Charlotte Museum of History, and it is my honor to be here with you virtually this evening to celebrate restoration and building projects across Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, that exemplify the best of preservation and historic neighborhood integration. We wish we could have been together in person tonight. We got to party with about 200 of you at the museum at last year's event, but we hope this online event will help us connect with people from all across the world tonight. To keep the party atmosphere going, we want to hear from you throughout the program in the comments this evening. So to kick it off right now, let us know that you're here by telling us in the chat or the comments your name and where you're tuning in from. I want to acknowledge some of the elected officials here with us this evening. We have our Charlotte City Council member Larkin Eggleston and Autumn Rearson Michael, Commissioner for the town of Davidson, North Carolina. If I am missing anyone, please give us a shout out in the chat. We don't want to miss you. We also have some titans of historic preservation in Mecklenburg County joining us virtually this evening that I want to recognize. The staff and board of the Charlotte Mecklenburg Historic Landmarks Commission, representatives of Charlotte's Historic Districts Commission, the UNC Charlotte Urban Institute, Preserve Mecklenburg, and former members of Historic Charlotte for founding this event and all the work that they did to support historic preservation locally. Thank you, and thank you for being here with us. I want to tell you a little bit about the Charlotte Museum of History. We're the cultural anchor for Charlotte's East Side, where we preserve Mecklenburg County's oldest home, the 1774 Alexander home site. We're also championing a community effort to save the historic Siloam School, a Jim Crow era school for African Americans in Northeast Charlotte. We're fundraising to move the school to the museum grounds as a powerful educational resource. We need our local history museum now more than ever as our community works to understand how we got to now and where we go from here. Please continue to support our preservation advocacy efforts by donating now at charlottemuseum.org. Now, toast and cheers to everyone who is celebrating with a preservation party kit tonight. I have made a specialty quarantini to enjoy the evening with in our museum cordial glasses. I hope everyone is enjoying their party packs. We appreciate our caterer, Your Custom Catering and Events, for making this possible for us this evening. If you are not in Charlotte or you missed out on a party kit, be sure to grab a drink, grab a family member, and enjoy the show. But we really miss seeing everyone's faces, so please do share a photo of yourself enjoying the awards on social media and tag it #CLTHistory. I would like to thank a very special group of people who took a leap of faith and decided that despite this crisis, exceptional preservation work is still ongoing in our region and deserves to be recognized and celebrated in 2020. Our planning committee, Chair Ed Basil, Carrie Fry, Christy Hart, Autumn Rearson Michael, Mike Sullivan, Jack Thompson, Edwin Wilson, Angel Johnson, Lauren Wallace, you all are amazing. We went from meeting at Amelie's and Optimist Hall for our planning meetings to meeting by Zoom. And I am so impressed by these creative and dedicated people who brought us together tonight. I also want to thank our staff members, Tracy Riles and Ian Pasquini, who helped make sure we could party safely at home. Now, please make some noise from your living room and in the chat and join me in thanking all of the sponsors who made this event possible this evening. These individuals, organizations, and businesses, despite an economic crisis, continue to invest in the future of Charlotte's history. A big thanks to our title sponsor, Ethic LLC, to Miss Janice Valder in honor of the Westside Community Land Trust, Williams Farrow Builders, Happy Mullen, State Farm, Neighboring Concepts, National Gypsum, Preserve Mecklenburg, Amy and Paul Krzea, and all our preservation friends. Give them a round of applause, please. These are the organizations that have supported us and championed this event, and we hope you will support them with your business. Now more than ever, we deeply appreciate your continued support. Well, we were blown away by the response to this event again this year, by our sponsors, by the quality of the nominated projects, and by the number of people joining us live tonight. We take this as a positive sign of the growing enthusiasm for preserving Mecklenburg County's unique architectural history. Thank you for being a part of it. By celebrating success stories in historic preservation, we hope this event will inspire future projects and continue to ignite passion for historic places in our area. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce our MC for tonight's show, Jack Thompson, Executive Director of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Historic Landmarks Commission. Jack Thompson has spent over 16 years in the field of preservation. In that time, he has served as the Director of the Historic Salisbury Foundation and the Executive Director of the Preservation Society of Asheville and Buncombe County, where he worked to expand the capacity of the organization in education and on-the-ground preservation advocacy. Jack has worked to save nearly 100 buildings, primarily through the use of real estate transactions, protective covenants, and preservation easements. In his time as a project manager for Lee Morgan, a historic restoration general contractor here in Charlotte, one of his projects included the Caldwell Barn reconstruction, which is at the Charlotte Museum of History. In December of 2019, Jack was selected to succeed Dr. Dan Morrill as the Executive Director of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Historic Landmarks Commission. Welcome, Jack. We are so glad that you're here with us tonight.
Adria, thank you so much for the invitation to join the party tonight. It's quite an honor. And already my wife Maria and I feel right at home in our return to the Queen City. It's so exciting to be a member of the Historic Landmarks Commission team with Miss Elizabeth Stewart and Mr. Stuart Gray, and to further the important work of this successful local program. Adria, thank you so much for inviting me to the party.
Thanks for being here.
Now tonight, I want to introduce our speaker, Dr. Caroline Brazalia. We're so grateful we were able to chat with her earlier this week about the importance of architecture. Now, Dr. Bruzelius is the Anne Murnick Cogan Distinguished Professor Emerita of Art and History at Duke University. She specializes in Gothic architecture, urbanism, and medieval sculpture in France and Italy. Her current work focuses on the social, political, and economic context for cathedral building, particularly Notre Dame in Paris. She's also the co-founder of the Wired Lab for Digital Art and History and Visual Culture. We are so grateful to chat with her earlier this week about why architecture touches on our emotions and why preserving the built environment is truly so important.
Hello, everybody. I'm Caroline Brazalia, and it's nice to meet you virtually. I'm going to talk about why buildings matter. And of course, we were reminded vividly about this a year and a half ago with the horrible fire at Notre Dame Cathedral. And that event, heart-searing as it was, reminded many of us that buildings have many lives, that they go through many phases, and that their existence is conditioned by the many things that can happen to them. Notre Dame is one building, a big building, but this happens to small buildings too. And I just want to show you a beautiful North Carolina tobacco shack to emphasize a point of the lives of buildings. Unfortunately, the lives of this kind of building, this beautiful wooden architecture, has often been extinguished. But we try as much as we can to remember buildings because they tell a human story, and they tell a profound human story. How did we live? How did we support ourselves? What did we, or what do we believe in? And I think everybody here believes in architecture. And also, architecture is representational. How do we wish to be seen? And no art form is like architecture. It's unique because it serves practical needs, basic human needs. It expresses the reality of our situation, of our human condition. But architecture, in spectacular form, also expresses our hopes, our dreams, our ambitions, and indeed also our faith. And that brings me to a building I know well and that I've worked on for many, many years, and that's the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris, which you see here in a glorious view of the facade of the building. But whether we are looking at the entrance end, as we are doing here, or from the river towards the east part of the building, the apse, and the flying buttresses and the crossing tower. This building was really it was intended to be seen. It was intended to be a spectacle, to be something fantastically beautiful. It was intended to be that in the 12th century, and it's still that in the 21st. Now, why is this particular cathedral, this building, so important? Not many people know that when Notre Dame was begun, it was the biggest building of its time, exponentially larger than any other cathedral structure. And it was also intended by the Bishop of Paris to anchor that city as capital of the Kingdom of France. So the Cathedral of Notre Dame is not only spiritual, it's also a political gesture, and a very important one. At the same time, because of its enormous scale, the cathedral was a laboratory for huge advances in the technology of building, in design and structure of Gothic form. You have to imagine that much of what they were doing was on some level experimental, especially because it was being done on such a huge scale. And of course, as we all know, that particular cathedral has become an icon or symbol of Paris, but also of the whole country of France. But all this was at risk on April 15th of 2019, when suddenly people noticed smoke coming up from the center part of the cathedral, what we call the crossing. And very rapidly, that smoke turned into huge flames, which spread from the crossing down to the east end of the church. You can see here the whole area of the apse or the altar was burning away, and then the fire began to spread through the nave, destroying the very large wooden framework for the spire, which you see beginning to collapse right here in this picture. And then after it collapsed, inside the building, continuing to spread all the way to the west end of the building and right up to the two grandiose west towers. If the fire had spread into those towers, it would have been a far worse disaster, because the towers have an interior superstructure of the wooden frame, a very substantial wooden frame that supports the bells, the massive bells of the cathedral, which need to be able to swing from side to side, held up by that wooden frame and not vibrate against the stone. So if the fire had spread into that timber work of the two towers, it would have probably demolished the towers, and that might well have been the end of Notre Dame. But some of you may have read an amazing story in the New York Times that recounted minute by minute how the firemen of Paris rushed up those 350, I think that's right, many steps, churning with all their equipment and their hoses to save the towers, and they did. Thank goodness. But nonetheless, the fire was terrible. And I could go on about it and about the complexity of the repair for many hours, but our time is limited. So I'm going to really stop my discussion about the fire now, but I do want to point out one thing. Remaining after the fire, and indeed probably the cause in some way of the fire, is the scaffolding you see surviving here over the crossing. The heat of the fire welded the many thousands of metal pieces of that scaffolding together. And removing that scaffolding is an ongoing project of enormous danger and complexity. And I'll come back to that at the end of this brief talk. The next morning, on April 16th, many people, me included, felt a great sense of relief, because the first photographs showed, yes, a lot of smoldering timber and ash and a horrible mess, but you can see in this picture that the cathedral was still very much intact. And there was, and there were not only the timber, and you can see that in the center here, but a lot of stones coming down from the vaults that had been destroyed when the crossing tower collapsed, and indeed when other vaults were compromised by the falling parts of the roof structure above. So a very serious situation, made more serious by the fact that stone is damaged by fire, as is mortar. So they couldn't tell if any more would collapse. So in fact, robots have been used to remove all this debris, which has been carefully collected, cataloged, and that is being kept on the site. You might wonder why I know so much about this building, and that's because they were cleaning the inside of Notre Dame in the 80s, and I saw that nobody else was going up the scaffolding. So maybe I thought I should do that because I'm interested in how buildings come to be. I'm an architectural historian. So I spend my life climbing around big buildings. And I think about the stones, each of those individual stones, where you saw them 2 slides ago, as documents, as sources of information about how a building is put together, right? So I'm interested in how a big building comes to be. Where do they start building? How do they pay for it? How does the design change over the decades or even centuries in which it takes to construct such an enormous building? And I can show you just briefly a detail of the nave walls of Notre Dame right here, where you can see, if you look across from this side over to the other side, and if you let your eye follow the stones, you can see that there are very many different things that are happening. So I'm the kind of person, when there's a scaffolding, who goes up and measures each stone. And I try to see how the walls connect from one end of the building to the other. I also record all the moldings and profiles of forms like these, and the bases and the plinths. And all that data together helped me unravel part of the very complicated story of building this church. Because it's not symmetrical and changes were introduced. Let me just show you one little detail of the many, many changes that exist in this building. If you look on this side, this is the south side of the nave, you can see that there are round openings here in the gallery of the second story. They're not present on the north side. And in fact, in my research, I came to the conclusion that there were 2 teams working separately on the north and the south sides, working simultaneously because the sizes of stone were the same, but under the direction of different master masons, with some freedom, obviously, about introducing variations in design. But right now, that seems like a kind of academic detail, because what they're going to have to do is to clear up the horrific mess of charred timber, melted lead, damaged mortar, and begin to take the building back to the condition it was once in. And this photograph, well, it makes anybody who's ever had to vacuum their house, right, makes them tremble and quake, because it's a terrible mess. But the worst and most dangerous part of that mess is this scaffolding here, which had been erected prior to the fire to repair the crossing tower. And that is what has welded together, and what you can see is hanging in a lot of welded but partially melted bits that are extremely dangerous. Therefore, all the work that is being done of cleaning the debris from above the vaults has to be done by workers who are suspended like spiders from a web, coming down, obviously very well covered because of the problem of the pulverized lead, picking up debris and putting it into these big buckets. They've cleared off all the parts of the vaults that survive, but the part that is around that central part of the building, the crossing, where we still have that scaffolding has been much more difficult. So a few months ago, they brought in the largest crane in Europe. It goes way, way up over the image, from which they will hang down workers who, with blow torches, and imagine doing this, you are 250 feet above the ground, blow torches dismantle this whole structure, and only then can they assess the condition of the stones of the vaults that survive, the condition of the mortar, and begin to move forward on covering that central part from rain, which is still entering inside the building, and then begin to rebuild. And we hope in our lifetimes that we will see Notre Dame in Paris glow over the Ile de la Cité the way it has always in the past, and bring such joy and meaning to the beauty of medieval architecture. I want to end with some beautiful words by the two 2020 Pritzker Prize winners, Yvonne Farrell and Shelley McNamara, because one of them said, "Architecture is a silent language that speaks." And this short phrase moved me deeply because, in fact, in the work I do, measuring stones, recording moldings, trying to look at the walls themselves as a document of how a building is made, right? That is, in fact, the silent speech that these two wonderful architects are talking about. So, thank you. Thank you very much, and enjoy your dinner.
Jack, I couldn't hear you right then. Is
Oh
your
my
audio
goodness.
on?
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. The long and the short of it, we want to thank Dr. Caroline Brazalia for joining us with a lovely and touching message about a very important place for the entire world. She's the co-founder of the Wired Lab at Duke. So go check that website out. It's dukewired.org. Her email is here on the screen, and she's happy to discuss architecture or art history. So please don't reach out to her. Don't hesitate to reach out to her. I think she's actually on the chat right now on YouTube. I think I saw her. So if she's still with us, you might throw her a question. Maybe you'll get a response tonight.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you, Dr. Bruzelius. It was amazing to see those behind-the-scenes images of the Notre Dame restoration, and the scale of that project is just mind-blowing. Really amazing to see. Everyone out there joining us tonight, tell us in the comments, what is your favorite historic spot in the Charlotte area or somewhere else in the world? And now, what you have all been waiting for, the awards. I want to thank our judges, Cassie Cunningham, Larkin Eggleston, John Howard, Catherine Mahoney, and Brooke Muller, and to Christy Harps for coordinating the luncheon. Thank you to Amy Hockett at National Gypsum for sponsoring lunch for our judges and coordinators, which was delivered to us so that we could be part of this judging process at home through Zoom.
We also want to thank all of our nominees. You're all winners in our book, taking on the hard-fought task of bringing these important places back to life, for taking the time to submit a nomination during a pandemic in a city that constantly seeks to be bigger, faster, taller, shinier. It's a new South City, and sometimes preservation is not always apparent. So we're excited to highlight projects across the region that work to preserve our built-in cultural heritage, which is our tangible connections to the past. So without further ado, here are the categories for this year's Charlotte Preservation Awards. At the end, we'll be handing out 2 additional awards with distinction to honor projects that went above and beyond in scope and scale. So please stay with us until the end. Now, Adrian and I have been arguing during some of our work up to this event about maybe it should be, it feels kind of like a talk show for us because we're going to be going back and forth. So we thought about, maybe this is the Regis and Kathy Lee portion of the evening. We argued about who was going to be who. We'll let y'all decide in the comments of the YouTube chat tonight and let us know. So tonight, our first category is neighborhood infill residential. So Adria, take a moment, and if you will, and let the folks that are watching know what that category consists of.
Well, Jack, I'm glad you asked. An infill project is new construction on a blank lot. For the purposes of the awards, it does not include additions to existing historic buildings. It's very important that the new construction integrate sensitively with its historic environment.
And the winner for neighborhood infill residential is
208 Grandin Road by Charlie Miller and Williams Farrow Builders. Congratulations.
Congratulations, everybody. Want to make sure everybody applauds the winner for this new infill construction on a never before built upon vacant lot. Disclaimer, no historic houses were harmed in the making of this project.
Very important.
In the Wesley Heights neighborhood, a locally designated historic district. The design was inspired by the Sears catalog kit house designs that were published by the Sears and Roebuck Company from 1908 to 1914. And basically, they were mail order houses that arrived on a train, pre-cut and numbered and ready for assembly. The unique design of the brick front porch sets this house apart from other new construction, modern interpretations of craftsman bungalows throughout Charlotte. And so with these images, we want to congratulate Charlie Miller and the team.
Congratulations. Our next category is historic preservation in a small or medium community outside of Mecklenburg County. This is a new category this year.
That's right, Adria. We decided to add this category because we know there are many projects done in the smaller communities without large budgets or developers. And this is a great opportunity to encourage the spread of a preservation mission throughout our region.
And the winner for historic preservation in a small to medium community is
the Mooresville Historic Wall Sign Restoration by Tim Brown, the senior planner of the town of Mooresville, and Mr. Scott Allred, owner of Brush Can Custom Murals of Asheville.
Show them some love in the chat. This was just such a visual delight to see nominated. You can see the overlaying of the Coca-Cola and department store logos, which has been preserved. The judges were just so impressed by the layering sign restoration and talked about how fun it was to learn more about the details of this process. This kind of project centered in a communal area really highlights how preservation and restoration of historic art or buildings can bring added interest to a downtown area and increase the well-being of the people who live and work there. The evaluation of the Mooresville Murals project generated discussion on how important it is to celebrate non-traditional preservation projects like these. We were so inspired by this project that a new award category might be showing up in the future for non-traditional preservation projects, signs, murals, buses. Get creative and let us know about it for 2021. Congratulations again to the Mooresville Historic Wall Sign Restoration team.
Congratulations to Tim and Scott. So next up is Excellence in Preservation, which is designed to honor a person, group, or project that preserves the cultural or built heritage of a neighborhood or community. This includes groups like local governments, neighborhood associations, clubs, nonprofit organizations, or individuals.
This year, the judges decided to award 2 projects in this category because they were both so different and they were really exciting projects. The first award is for Excellence in Preservation for Community History, and the winner is
the town of Huntersville Jail. I'm excited the judges chose to honor the dedicated work of my colleague Stuart Gray at the Historic Landmarks Commission, as well as the town of Huntersville and the Old Huntersville Historical Society who helped spearhead the project.
The Huntersville Town Jail was built around 1935 as a public works project during the Great Depression. It's the oldest municipal building in Huntersville. It was used for about 30 years, then was essentially used as storage and abandoned and was quickly deteriorating. But thanks to this public-private partnership, the jail is a wonderful example of community and government cooperation and of the effectiveness of grassroots historic preservation. Now the jail is part of a larger historic fabric of Huntersville, and Old Huntersville Historical Society is planning to expand interpretation of the site and to create a pocket park around the jail. Stuart Gray really went above and beyond his call of duty and was the catalyst to help push this project over the finish. Thanks to this great project, and congrats again to the team.
So the next award for excellence in preservation for advocacy and research, the next category, and the winner is
NC Modernist, submitted by George Smart.
As many of you know, NC Modernist is a nonprofit digital archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of North Carolina modernist residential design. Founded by my dear friend, Mr. George Smart in 2007, it represents the top tier in terms of advocacy plus impact in Charlotte. The archive covers over 400 modernist homes in the Charlotte area. And although some have already been torn down or lost to time, this collection speaks to the forward thinking in the Charlotte design arena. All of the information gathered is free and accessible to the public online, which helps support advocacy efforts by other organizations, including the museum, real estate professionals, and others. The archive provides inspiration, identification, and research support about the houses featured on the museum's annual Mad About Modern tour. Congratulations, George.
Congratulations, NC Modernist. We do rely on that archive quite frequently. It was wonderful to see them win this year. And moving on to our next category, we've got preservation commercial. Jack, it's your turn. Tell everybody what they've won. I mean, what this category is.
Folks, this category is meant to honor the work in restoring, rehabilitating, and adaptively reusing a historic commercial structure, including businesses, cultural facilities, and others that were built prior to 1970.
And the winner for preservation commercial is
2322 Donovan Drive, submitted by Greg Papanastas with Argos Real Estate Advisors.
What a great project. The judges noted that these types of buildings typically do not receive a lot of attention, and they're often demolished. But when they're kept, people really do pay attention to them. This award celebrates the buildings that aren't necessarily sexy on their own, but important to preserve and reuse. The judges noted that this building could have been lost and something much bigger built, which makes its preservation all the more impressive. Keeping and preserving post-war era buildings, such as the Donovan building at 322 Donovan, adds diversity to the built environment. We hope this project will encourage others to take time to appreciate preservation and to preserve other post-war commercial buildings throughout Charlotte. Congratulations again to Greg Papanastos and Argos Real Estate Advisors.
Great job, Greg. Now, our next category is preservation residential, which is for the restoration of a historic residential structure and may include a new addition to the historic place. And the winner for preservation residential is
429 West Park Avenue in historic Wilmore, owned by Alex and Sarah Wheat.
This project showcases a true preservation ethic. Unlike many property owners of smaller historic homes, Alex and Sarah did not add a second story pop-a top or any other major addition to this house, keeping the exterior and most of the interior intact in its original construction. Oftentimes less is very much more. They also restored all of the original windows, which are often the most threatened element in a historic house. The house sits on a large lot that anchors the corner of two primary streets, South Mint and West Park, of both of the Wilmore Local Historic District. And because of the home's visibility, the impact of the home as it was intended to look is even stronger. According to the Charlotte Historic Districts Commission, prior to the Wheats purchasing the house, Commission staff are fielding inquiries from developers about demolition of the structure and construction of multifamily apartments on the site. So we're grateful to get to recognize this preservation project instead of lamenting its loss. Quick note to future nominees, the before and after photos of this project are shocking, and they're very compelling, and it always makes for a good nomination package. Sarah even writes in the submission that their youngest child cried when her parents first showed her the new house. The restoration was recently featured in a Charlotte Agenda highlight. So congratulations, Sarah and Alex.
Really amazing to see those before and after pictures. It takes a lot of vision to do a project like that. Thank you to the Wheats for doing this restoration project here in Charlotte. Our next category is our Award with Distinction, which is a special award the judges decided to add after reviewing the projects because they were just so good. These projects are the best of the best.
Right, the two projects went above and beyond in scope and scale. They set the bar really high with dramatic transformations that honor the legacy of the individual spaces. And each told a very detailed story about the history and emotions of each space and helped the judges understand the complexities of the project.
The first award with distinction goes to
Sodoma Law Offices. This project was led by Nicole Sodoma of Sodoma Law, Tom Wright and Krista Carlson of SGA Narmore Wright, Steve Ratzlaff and Keely Edwards of Ratzlaff Construction, and Allison Volkins of C Design Incorporated. The adaptive reuse of mills in Charlotte has become a trend. Sodoma Law sets itself apart with the narrative of the project and the restored details relating to the mill's history. The historical architecture and significance and extent of work is really impressive between the preservation of the building and the introduction of modern elements to help make it function. Our judges noted the grandeur and significance of the project. They also commented on how the extensive narrative provided by the applicant added richness to the understanding of the project. For instance, just one quote from the application states, "The Graham continues to be a reminder of what was, what is, and what can be." And it shows how historic preservation can be almost poetic at times. Congratulations to Sodoma Law and the team.
Make some noise in the chat for Sodoma Law. This was such an amazing project.
Now, the next award with distinction and the final award of the night goes to
Sloan Porterhouse, owned and restored by Brian Clark and Sarah Hammett Clark. This project embodies the essence of preservation, from the process to the end result, showcasing that preservation is accessible to the average regular homeowner. A quote from the submission said, "The result is that most folks think every old house is a money pit and that you have to be rich to do it. If nothing else, our work on the Sloan Porterhouse shows that this is simply not true. We were able to bring this house all the way back for far less than a comparable new house would cost." The project is an example of true preservation. The house is still recognizable both inside and out. The judges commended the homeowner for remaining true to the original floor plan, keeping the rooms and gorgeous wood walls intact, and the kitchen design is notable for reflecting the architecture of the house. The windows that you see there on the east end flanking the chimney are original 9/6 windows like those in the Hezekiah Alexander house and the other remaining late 18th century houses in the county. The property owner's narrative in the submission also helped the judges understand the project and its struggles. The owner notes that at one point, due to life circumstances changing, he and his dogs moved into the house with no utilities and continued to work and live there. It's truly a product of love and dedication. Thank you for preserving such an important part of Mecklenburg County's history. Everyone give a loud round of applause for this amazing project. Congratulations.
Incredible project. Thank you so much, Brian and Sarah. And congratulations to all of our winners and nominees. We really loved seeing your projects, and your work promoting the importance of preserving our historic places is so important to our community. We are humbled by your commitment and dedication to the cause.
Thank you again to all of our winners, to our nominees. Thank you all for attending the awards tonight, and thanks to Jack for emceeing. And of course, thank you again to our wonderful sponsors, Ethic. We can't thank you enough for being our title sponsor for this year's event. If you've never toured the Hezekiah Alexander home site in East Charlotte, I hope you will visit us at the museum when we reopen to take a tour. It's really a truly special place. We'll also host our award-winning Mad About Modern Home Tour virtually starting September 26th, providing attendees with insider access to a curated collection of some of the best mid-century and modern design and architecture in the Queen City. Tickets are on sale now, so get yours today. The digital experience will feature a program by Excellence in Preservation winner NC Modernist founder George Smart, also known as the Lorax of Modernism. This fall, in partnership with the Historic Landmarks Commission, the museum will also be virtually hosting a seminar series on preservation in our area. It's meant for developers, real estate professionals, and preservation-minded advocates. Each session will give you insight into active ways to support preservation through local, state, and national resources. This is a free series. I hope you will join us. We also hope you will consider making a donation or becoming a member of the museum tonight, and stay connected with us by signing up for our emails or following us on social media. Check out our ongoing digital content at charlottemuseum.org/digital. I hope everyone has a great night. I'd like to toast to our winners, our attendees. I hope you all will see us again soon. Cheers.